It all started in the year 1999 when the Spring Hill, Tennessee factory cranked out this flawless piece of machinery. This is my 1999 Saturn SL1. It was originally sold at Saturn of Massapequa, New York. In 2003, it made its way to Route 40 auto sales in Frostburg, Maryland, which is where my family was living at the time. My grandma bought it at about 29,000 miles and continued to use it as we moved to South Dakota. She put about 30,000 miles on the green Saturn until she eventually became too old to drive. Sometime around 2016 or so, she drove the car into the garage wall, earning it the golden fender. This was the last time she ever drove a car. For the next few years, it became a general family car that was mainly used for going to the grocery store every week. I got my driver's license at the beginning of 2024, and the green Saturn immediately became my daily driver. Since then, I have used this car for everything, and in only a year and a half, I have put on an additional 30,000 miles. Many original Saturn S-Series cars begin to have reliability issues at this age. However, my SL1 does not suffer these problems. Not only is the green Saturn a typical low-miles, low-rust grandma car, but I have also made myself into a car mechanic. My interest in Saturns has led me to turn my grandma's garage into my own Saturn dealership, where my friends and I regularly work on a variety of S-Series cars. This has been the topic of my YouTube channel for almost 2 years now. My 1999 SL1 is a simple car, not only by today's standards, but also according to the options that it did not come with. Being of the number 1 trim level, my SL1 has the single-cam variant of the Saturn 1.9-liter engine, and it produces 100 horsepower. It is equipped with
the Saturn 4-speed automatic transaxle,
which was technically an upgrade as it made the car a little more expensive. Otherwise, there are no power conveniences such as power windows, power locks, cruise control, etc. It has one important upgrade over the stock configuration, the ABS traction control system. This is a 100% necessary thing if you plan to drive your Saturn in the winter. As for upgrades I have made, it now has the seats from my dad's SL2. Trim level 2 front seats have an adjustable headrest and additional height and back support settings. Furthermore, I have replaced the original suspension components and I have upgraded the head unit to a Kenwood. The exterior of the car is not the greatest looking. We have the aforementioned gold fender and a blue rear fender due to an accident my dad was in a few years ago. I got rear-ended a few months ago, so the back end is all messed up. But luckily there was no damage to any mechanical components in either accident. Overall, it's a simple and reliable vehicle that I've used for everything and will probably never get rid of. So I want to take a road trip this summer to visit my grandma in the Frederick, Maryland area. So can the old green Saturn do it? Well, yes, actually it can. In fact, it already has. I did the same road trip just after Christmas of 2024, and I used my SL1. I didn't film any of it for a video because I wanted to focus on making sure that it would actually all work out. The trip was very salty but uneventful, except for the time I flew off of I-68 in West Virginia and put a dent in the hood. Now it is a question of can the Saturn make it to Maryland and back again. Not only have I made further improvements to the well-being of this vehicle, but the road conditions will be infinitely better than they were in the winter, so
yeah, I sure hope it does.
My brother and I departed Saturn of Brookings on the early morning of June 30th. The odometer was at 92,330 miles, and there was a little over a half a tank of gas. The trip involves taking I-29 down to Loveland, Iowa, where I get onto I-880 and later I-80. On the other side of Iowa in the Quad Cities, I get onto I-74, which takes me diagonally down Illinois. I stay the night in Danville. I continue on I-74 until the Indianapolis Beltway. From there, I get onto I-70, which will take me the rest of the way through Indiana and all the way across Ohio. In Washington, Pennsylvania, I leave I-70 for I-79, which takes me to I-68 in Morgantown, West Virginia. I-68 takes me through the panhandle of Maryland until I meet back up with I-70 again and go through Hagerstown and Frederick. The return trip is everything in reverse. The half a tank of gas got me to about Missouri Valley, not too far from I-880. Des Moines had some traffic, but it wasn't all that bad. It was around here that the service engine soon light came on. This is most likely an emissions code because there is a small hole in my exhaust that causes the light to come on from time to time. I filled up for a second time at the world's largest truck stop, which is only about 20 minutes from the edge of the Quad Cities. And just after that, we crossed the river that I do not remember the name of into Illinois. I later stopped in Galesburg to do some train watching. And just before we got to Dansville, we saw a classic Chevy El Camino. The following day started with getting to and working through the Indianapolis Beltway. There was a greater amount of traffic to contend with compared to Des Moines. Just after the Beltway was time for the third gas fill-up. Every Saturn engine burns oil, something about the way they design the piston rings. Now there is a difference between the background oil burning that always happens in Saturn engines and actual bad oil burning, and my Saturn doesn't have it particularly bad. For most Saturns, it is necessary to add a quart of oil every 1,500 miles. Ohio. It got to be pretty rainy during this part of the trip, and pretty soon I reached the dreaded Columbus. Towards the later part of Ohio, the terrain began to stop being flat. This is where the usage of third gear increases significantly with all the hills I have to climb. I then crossed the other great river that I don't remember the name of into West Virginia. The hills became steeper and later became full-blown mountains. My fourth gas fill-up was somewhere just outside of Morgantown. When I was on I-68, there were grades that required high RPMs in third gear for long periods of time. My Saturn may not have a very powerful drivetrain, but the computer knows how to use that power efficiently, and it shifts the transmission exactly in accordance to changes in load. The steepest grade of all will always be my grandma's driveway. After 41 gallons of gas, plus that half a tank I started with, I spent $121 on fuel, not including the half a tank, and traveled 1,447 miles. Average fuel economy for the first half of this trip was 34.2 miles per gallon. The automatic SL1 is EPA rated 37 miles per gallon, according to the spec sheet. I had to run the air conditioning pretty much 100% of the time, so I would imagine that brought down efficiency a little bit. My time in Maryland was eventful. I spent a lot of time filming trains on the local CSX lines. That will be getting a video on my other channel sometime soon. One day I went to Walmart and picked up a $20 OBD2 scanner to see what the code was about. Just as I had suspected, it is the usual P0137 code, which indicates that the downstream oxygen 2 sensor is outputting a lower than normal voltage. As I said previously, I have determined that there is a small exhaust leak. With this tool, I am able to clear the code and make the light go away. A few days later, I changed the oil. I usually do this every 3,000 miles. I didn't feel like changing the oil in the middle of Iowa, so it was overdue by about 1,000. The engine is supposed to have 4 quarts of oil, but you can see the gallon jug is not quite full. Typical Saturn activity. I then went to the Delmarva Peninsula for a day to see some classic Alco locomotives. During my visit, I saw a few other fellow Saturn S-Series cars on the roads. The last Saturn I saw, which was on the last day in Maryland, was on I-70 just outside of Frederick. All of the previous Saturns were in oncoming traffic, but I was able to capture a video of this one. This is a fellow second-gen SL1. By the time I was ready to head back to South Dakota, I had put on an additional 777 miles during my trip. I did not film much of anything for the return trip as it was a nearly identical experience to the outgoing trip, but in reverse. I filled up 5 times during the 2 days of driving, totaling $131.21. Taking a look at the whole trip, I traveled 3,658 miles, consumed approximately 110 gallons of gasoline, spent $319.32 on fuel starting on day 1, and had an average fuel economy of 33.8 miles per gallon. The driving experience was fine. Adding the SL2 seats made the ride a little more comfortable compared to the last time I took the Saturn to Maryland. However, my leg and lower back became fatigued and stiff seeing that I did not have cruise control. I had to manually hold the pedal down for long periods of time. The Saturn does not have the smoothest suspension, but that didn't end up bothering me much. No problems arose during the trip, and the car has continued to be reliable since I returned. And so it is settled. My 1999 Saturn SL1 can make an over 3,500 mile trip to the East Coast and back. This is most likely the case for a lot of other Saturns out there, but obviously it needs to be one that is well maintained and one that can be trusted. I almost took my 94 SC2 on this trip, as it has proven to be pretty reliable. However, I could not get the air conditioning system fixed in time for my departure. Doing this much driving in an old Saturn is not for everyone. It lacks many modern amenities, it has a low-powered engine, and a good Saturn requires a good maintainer. But if you do choose to task your old Saturn with such a trip, you will be rewarded in fuel economy. Well, I have run out of things to say on this matter, so I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.